So thank you for joining us today, Ted. It's good to see you again.
Yeah, you as well.
So thank you. So the purpose of this conversation today is to talk through your career, where it all started, how you progressed to where you are today, some maybe some challenges you faced, and hiring process you've been down that you felt were effective. But please, if you could start, Ted, tell us where it all began for you.
Well, just a quick, I'll tell you kind of what I do now. I'm a project manager, site manager,
Hmm.
in the marine industry. I specialize in the repair and retrofit of commercial vessels, container ships, oil tankers, bulk carriers, and the like.
Hmm.
I'd say it all started when I was a teenager. I got my first job at a marina on a mountain lake in Georgia here in the U.S. And I loved it. It's the best job to this day I've ever had. Working on boats in the summer, talking to girls in bikinis, and I said I want to work on boats.
Yeah,
And
100%.
so I found out that that is something you could do. At the time and when I was growing up, the marine industry was not something that was well known to most Americans.
Right.
Obviously, today with global geopolitics going on, it's getting a lot more spotlight. But 30 years ago, no one knew how to become a sailor or how to become a marine engineer. So I did a little bit of research and I figured out that my university had a degree in naval architecture, and I said that's what I want to do. And I went to school for naval architecture. I thought I would be designing yachts and living on the beach. It didn't quite work out that way, but I like where it ended up. So yeah,
Nice. That is interesting. And then tell us what you do today.
yeah. So I'm currently a contractor. Whenever a ship owner has a project on a ship's going to dry dock, or they want to install some new pieces of equipment on a ship, I'm the guy they call to go to the shipyard and make sure the project goes on time and on budget.
Nice. And you mentioned that you started by studying naval architecture. So obviously at the beginning, your degree was to focus on the design phases of these projects, but now you're on site. So how did that transition happen?
Well, I graduated university into the job market in 2015-ish, and that was right when oil prices dropped. So
Right.
when I went into university, naval architects and marine engineers had like some of the best job placement and best hiring rates in the country.
Hmm.
And then flash forward to when I graduated, and they had some of the worst. So
Oh,
I I got lucky. A friend of a friend got me a position first on a contract basis and then on a permanent basis with a small, well, not small, but our department was small, of a ship service company.
mhm.
And we did a little bit of engineering, but mainly we were on site doing installations, doing inspections. And the good thing about that job, even though I didn't get paid hardly anything, is it got me on board vessels. It got me out of the office. It got me on site. It got me doing projects, and I
Mhm.
loved it. I loved the travel. I loved going on board these big machines. I loved just the scale of it. You know,
Yeah,
seeing an
it's
engine,
impressive, isn't it? Yeah.
I mean, my mind was blown. Everyone knows ships are big, but until you stand next to an engine that you can literally stand inside, you
Yeah.
don't really understand the scale. And I just
So
thought
t
it was the coolest thing possible.
Yeah, of course it is. It really interests me. That's why I spent a long time recruiting in the industry. If I hadn't been recruiting, I would have loved to have worked in the industry. But for someone outside, because the purpose of these conversations as well are to give some of the younger generation an idea about different industries. You mentioned there the ships and the pure scale of them. What's the biggest ship you've been involved in working on? Like, how can people compare it to something ordinary on the street, the size of the vessel?
I think the longest ship I've ever personally dry docked was 350 odd meters. So for Americans, that's almost four football fields.
Yeah, massive.
It's that is actually, it's funny you bring that up. That's one of the hardest things to impress on people, because you tell somebody you work on some vessel that holds 180,000 tons of cargo, You
Mm.
know, it's a scale that most people can't wrap their heads around. You
No,
know,
it's
how do
crazy.
you
Yeah,
explain
unless
what 180,000 tons is? It's just it's off the scale.
it always blows my mind. How does it still float?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's so much weight. But yes, of course. And what do you think surprised you along the way? Was there anything that, because you've traveled the world with your job, is there been a time, or first of all, actually, before we ask that question, where has your job taken you? What locations have you been to over the years?
Well, I started out with the company in Miami, Florida, which has its
Hmm.
own culture. I jumped from there after a couple of years. I wasn't, I wanted to expand my horizons. And in the US, the shipbuilding industry doesn't really have many options.
Okay.
So, like a lot of Americans in the industry, I took a job with a government contractor. I was helping to build submarines for the US Navy. I was with that company for a year and a half, 2 years, but you know, it's 10,000 people. You're just a cog in a machine.
Hmm.
So I didn't really like the future there, and I had what I would call my big break in 2018. I started working for an American-owned shipping company as a project engineer, and they had about 50 vessels at the time, and they were doing most of their projects in China. And they told me, "Oh, you might go to China. You might get a little bit of on-site experience, but we're not really sure yet."
Hmm.
Um, well, I don't know how much your audience knows about what happens simultaneously with COVID. There was a global regulation to take sulfur out of shipping emissions.
Hmm.
So a lot of companies were installing these systems that would scrub the sulfur out of their exhaust. And there was a hard deadline that everyone had to meet these regulations on January 1st, 2020.
Hmm.
So there was a mad dash in all of 2019 to install these systems and install these systems. And of course, not every company was able to meet that deadline, so they it carried over into 2020, which was
Hmm.
exactly the time of COVID.
Yeah.
So I would say that was the big turning point in my career, and that's where I really started going overseas and living overseas. I was in China all of 2019, got stuck
Hmm.
there in COVID in 2020, and that's how I became what I am today, a project manager, site manager, because I was the only guy in the country. They couldn't get other people in. So I just naturally kind of took on more responsibility and more responsibility until I was the guy in charge of dry docks. But I've been,
Nice.
a dozen different shipyards in China. I lived in Singapore for a year. I've done dry docks in the Middle East. So
Hmm.
I'm starting to kind of understand the industry now.
Nice. And when you was in China, what specific locations? Was it Shenzhen you was in, or
I lived in Shenzhen for 1 year. I
Mhm.
lived in the Zhoushan Islands for 2 years, which
They're quite
is a group of
isolated, right?
islands.
Or
They are, man, the Chinese are good at building bridges. I'll tell you that. When I moved there, you had to get to work by ferry, and now most of those islands are connected by bridges. But yes,
wow,
they are.
that's cool.
They're not the China you see on television. That's for sure.
And how is it living there as an American? How are you taken by the locals?
You know, I had a great experience.
Good.
As long as I don't speak a word of Chinese, but as
Mm.
long as you have a good attitude, you smile, and you eat anything, people tend to tolerate you. And
Okay.
luckily, I can eat just about anything. And the lack of Chinese in the industry is really not an issue.
Hmm.
Everybody you deal with on a daily basis and on the management side will speak good English, and
Hmm.
technical words are the same in Chinese and English.
Yeah.
A turbocharger is a turbocharger in Chinese.
Yeah. Okay. That's useful. And how about dealing with the time difference? You mentioned you were stuck there a long time, and I can understand America to China. Keeping in touch with maybe some of your family or friends back home. Was it a struggle
Well,
or
we were able to come up with a time that worked for all of us. Sometimes
nice?
it encroached on my social time, but
Mhm.
we got through that. the hardest part is just the global industry of shipping. You know, if
Yeah.
scheduling a call with America isn't hard, but if you have one person in the UK, one person in Dubai, and one person in the
Yeah.
US,
Yeah.
that's when it starts getting awkward.
Yeah, I understand. And for someone who doesn't know, Ted, can you tell us what is your responsibilities? We understand being a site supervisor. Let's say you're on a project. It's Monday morning. What sort of things are you involved in day to day?
Well, on a normal project, the day will start with a meeting between the ship's officers and the shipyard managers telling us what daily jobs and tasks for that day are going to be. We
Mhm.
make sure that there's no conflicting jobs, that all jobs are going to be done safely. They'll give me a list of inspections for the day. So, in addition to being on top of the budget and on top of the schedule, I'm also part QC manager. You know, I have to go do fit up and welding inspections or pre paint inspections.
Mhm.
Then I have to, in the afternoon, I have to coordinate all of my suppliers to get all of the material there on time or special service technicians there on time. And then I have to review the ongoing plan and then I get weekly budget updates. So I have to make sure that we stay on budget.
Nice.
On bigger
How is that?
projects,
Is it hard to keep on budget, or how does that
oh, it's
tend to
always
go?
hard to keep on budget.
Yeah.
And but the budget really starts earlier. The budget comes from making sure that you have a good list of jobs to be done beforehand. So
Right.
a well planned project is usually a smooth project.
Right. That
But
makes
in my
sense.
current role as a contractor, sometimes I'm not involved in the pre
Yeah.
planning. They just hand me a list and say go,
Yeah.
and sometimes it works out, and sometimes it's harder than it should be.
Yeah, I appreciate that. We're part of that sort of process as well. We tend to come in at a later stage as a recruitment agent, and then it can be difficult to work someone's salary into the budget that they've got left on the site, mate. Has there ever been a moment where you feel like, wow, I can't believe I'm responsible for this? Because I can.
Definitely. I In the middle of COVID, I took a contract job in the north of China in December 2020, and these poor crew members came. They had been on board this ship for like a year because they weren't able to get off the vessel because of
Wow.
restrictions and travel restrictions during COVID. They were completely burnt out. The vessel owner hadn't been on board the ship in a year, so they couldn't get a list of jobs. And the ship arrived in the shipyard, and it was just me because we obviously they couldn't get anybody there to help me. And they
Mm.
said, "Fix the ship." And and you go on board, and everywhere you look, there's a problem. Every time you disconnect a pipe, the inside of the pipe is rotten.
Wow.
Every piece of machinery you open, something's broken. And I just, you know, it, it was everything you could keep from just going into the office and going back to the hotel and just taking a hot shower and crying in the shower. It was just a brutal, brutal project.
Wow, I know the
Um,
ones when you open one door and 100 other things come flying out constantly.
exactly.
And in them situations, Ted, what keeps you calm when things go wrong? You strike me as someone who is quite a calm person. So what keeps you calm when things are going wrong on site or you're
Well,
hitting more
I've
problems?
definitely had to work on that over the years. I've had some mentors help me with that, but I think a lot of young men and young engineers have a tendency to panic or overreact.
Hmm.
Um, and you know, take a break, take a second, go get a coffee, think on it for a second, come back from another angle.
Hmm.
Just remember, it's not life and death. We're going to get through this. There's nothing here we can't fix with time and money. So
Yeah,
just always keep that in your mind. Just just keep going. That's all you can do.
that's that's good advice. And on the topic of that, what advice would you give someone, say in your shoes from maybe 10, 20 years ago, getting started into the industry? Let's say someone has decided to start a naval architect degree and then they're going to be looking to come into the same sort of work as you. What advice or guidance would you give that person?
I mean, I would just say um, keep keep looking for opportunity. always say yes to the hard jobs. Always say yes to opportunity.
Hmm.
If you're ever asked, do you want to go and do this? Say yes. Um, always try and find a mentor. Try and ask good questions. Try and stay engaged.
Hmm.
There's a lot of people out there who want to mentor people
Yeah,
and will help you, but you have to be engaged. You have to ask the right questions. You can't be you can't be a bump on a log. You gotta be there. You gotta show up and just prove that you're reliable. You know,
nice. Yeah, that is good advice. You got to basically stay focused on where you're going, and keep asking, keep heading in the right direction.
yeah. I
Um,
mean, the only reason I got to where I am is because I kept asking questions and just trying to learn.
mhm.
When I originally went to China, my scope was very small, but I was working with people who'd been in the industry for 50 years and they were just a wealth of knowledge. And
Yeah,
just by being around them and absorbing what they knew and seeing how they worked on a day to day basis, I slowly acquired the knowledge. And
brilliant. Is
I
there
have
anyone who
figured,
sticks out? Sorry, go ahead.
the only other thing I'd say is anybody who's starting off in naval architecture or marine engineering, I would highly recommend trying to do ship repair
Hmm.
rather than ship design or new construction, or at least do some ship repair. Because in ship
Why is that?
repair,
Yeah.
you see what goes wrong and how to fix it. You see what's a good design and what's a bad design. You know what machinery is accessible to fix and what's not. What can be removed and what can't be removed.
Mm.
And it's dirtier, but you learn so much more from the dirty
I
jobs.
can appreciate that. I get that because I suppose building something from scratch, you would follow a schedule and it would fall into place. Whereas preparing something, you're going to tweak areas that are not need to be touched, and then you realize how it's all actually connected, and you're going to learn faster that way, I think.
Yeah, I mean,
Um,
if you're building a ship from scratch and they go install a winch, you just buy a winch and install it. But if you're doing
yeah.
a repair, the owner doesn't want to pay for a whole new winch, so then you have to take it apart, and you're like, oh, I didn't know that the clutch worked like that. So you
Mm.
you just learn a lot more from repair than you do from new build. Not that you should avoid new build, but
Yeah,
repair gives you a wealth of knowledge.
yeah, nice. Okay. Well, thank you, Ted. That was a really good overview, and I think really great advice for anyone who is stepping into the industry. Along your journey, I know you've worked for a few different companies. I know I was myself and my old colleague Alfie was happy to help you join a position years ago.
Yeah.
I think it's 2020 or 2021. But tell me, has there been when you've joined these companies, obviously it's a lot of international work. I know you started in America, but you've spoke with companies and worked with companies across the world. Is there any hiring processes that have stuck out to you that have been a good time for you to show who you are?
There was one years ago. I had an interview with a company here in Florida, um, and they asked me to do a 30-minute PowerPoint about myself and and
Oh,
and
really?
and what I had accomplished and how I got to where I was. And at the time, it kind of annoyed me, to be honest.
Mm,
But then, in hindsight, they were not in this industry. You know, they were doing marine things now, but one of them had an aerospace background, one of them had a civil background, and the PowerPoint really allowed me to visually communicate where I've been, what I've done, the problems I face on a daily basis.
mm,
And I find myself pulling up that same PowerPoint now
really?
when I have to explain to people in 5 minutes what I do. Hey, just take a look at this. This is an example. And I don't think that would be a good medium for every interview or for every person. But in hindsight, that was a pretty effective way to communicate my skills and my experiences.
Definitely. And I think visuals are the easiest way for anyone to understand something across different languages too. Everyone can normally follow a visual map. So that's interesting. That's well cool. And you still use it today sometimes.
I do. Yeah.
That is good. It's been a good use of time then making that presentation. What is your opinion on? how long a hiring process should take. So, for example, if you was to apply for a job day one, and I'm talking about the length of time from applying, waiting to hear back, having an interview, and like basically getting told, okay, we'd like to work with you. How long do you think that hiring process should realistically take?
Well, I think in the ideal world, it should take anywhere between 1 to 2 months. But
Hmm.
I think more important than the time is just keeping the communication constant and open.
Hmm.
Um, I wouldn't mind if a hiring process went 3 months, as long as the hiring manager was in weekly, drop me a line or an email saying, hey,
Hmm.
we're still deliberating, or we're in this process, or we're waiting for this person to get back from vacation. As long as
Hmm.
I'm not in the dark about a hiring
Yeah,
process, um, I can be very understanding if something takes longer than expected. But I think
nice.
a lot of people in the job market now have the same experiences of, you're talking, and then zero communication, ghosted,
Yeah.
no answer, no explanation. And I think that's the most frustrating thing about the hiring
Well,
process now.
yes, and to be honest with you, that's one of the reasons why we recently launched Juice. The idea behind it is Juice, like the word from tennis, so bringing you to the end point of a great match. And what we're aiming to do is hire companies that are hiring. We now ask them for their hiring process, all their interview questions that they would typically ask from start to finish. We would then find the candidate. So, say it was yourself for a dry dock supervisor position. I would go through the interview questions with you that the client would have asked you themselves. We would record it on a platform like this, and then we would submit your CV with the hiring process done, so that then the client and their team can review it in their spare time. The aim is to reduce the time from starting to finishing so that hopefully things are not left or forgotten about or other things come up and you're left in the dark. And the idea is that we can do the whole hiring process maybe in 45 minutes or an hour and then send it over. Then there'll be like maybe one call and you can know what the decision is. And our aim is to reduce the amount of, there is a lot of, unfortunately, yeah, like you say, ghosting and positions fall away and stuff in the industry to
I mean,
try and tackle that
excellent.
issue.
Anything that can make the process more streamlined, I think myself and everybody else would greatly appreciate.
Yeah, me too as well. um, but yes, so tell me, coming away from hiring processes, really, I'm so interested in your career. So, can you tell me a skill that you think's mattered most throughout your career?
Honestly, my career has really been based around communication and being able to kind of understand multiple points of view and just be jack of all trades, master at none.
Yeah.
The fact that I have an engineering degree and I understand why we're doing things, and I can explain to people the engineers thinking this and we need to do this.
Hmm.
Just kind of being that, middleman between designers and installers and owners and businessmen, kind of holding it all together has really been, I think, the best skill for me.
Hmm.
And my personality to go overseas, my ability to get along with people, and put in the long hours at work. Dry docks are 7-day weeks for
Yeah.
45 days straight. So the
Yeah.
ability to do that, um, it, 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 it's just a good fit for me. It's definitely not a
Yeah.
good fit for everybody, but
Yeah.
it is for me. So
Yeah. Nice. They are
those
long
things
days, I
are
can
probably,
imagine.
yeah,
How many
that's
hours are you
probably my
normally
skill.
working per day on that sort of setup?
Oh, 12-hour days are the the norm, if not longer, depending on what's planned.
Hmm.
Um, Overseas shipyards are 24/7 operations, and
Hmm.
if a, in ships, if they're not at sea, they're not making money. So ship
Right.
owners don't want that ship in the yard any longer than it has to be. If it
Yeah.
misses a date to pick up cargo, there's massive financial repercussions. So there's a
Right. I
lot of
see.
pressure on people to get that boat out of the shipyard.
I can imagine. And on that topic, who's in charge? Is there one? I suppose it's probably a few people, but in a dry dock, in that position, so say a ship is about to miss a deadline or it is missing a deadline, who is in charge? What happens in, who's ringing who in them days?
Well, the dry dock manager will be in constant communication with the ship owner, whether it's a technical superintendent or like a VP of technical, the technical manager. And then the technical manager will make a decision on if we can cut jobs and still make the dates, or
Hmm.
if he needs to alert the commercial folks that, guys, it's not going to happen and we need to pivot.
Hmm.
And those can be tough conversations.
Mm, I can imagine.
Yeah, there's a lot
Okay,
of stress around that time.
I can imagine. Tougher times. Going to a better time, what would you say is your proudest moment of your career?
Well, there's been some exceptionally hard dry docks, but I mean, the proudest moment is always seeing the ship sail away when you're done with a project.
Oh, that's nice. Yeah.
We have a really unique experience in that our workplace physically leaves
Yeah.
and goes over the horizon. And
Nice.
once that ship cast off the lines and set sail, and there's physically nothing more you can do. It is the ship is gone,
Yeah,
and
that must be
so
such a satisfying feeling when you're seeing it
it's the
sail
best.
away.
And then the boss calls and says, "Okay, you got 2 weeks until the next one," and you just make a beeline to the airport and the closest beach.
Yeah.
It's the best feeling in the world.
Ah, that's well nice. That's the moments people don't really talk about in this industry, the last days of the project. I bet you meet some great people along the way. Have you made any good friends in areas, places you wouldn't
Oh
expect?
my goodness, so many. I need to have a big party and get everybody from around the world all together. I want all my friends to meet each other, but I got friend
Yeah.
groups in 4 different countries. So yeah, I need to travel more and go see them more often.
Yeah, that's nice. Ah, and coming towards the end now, Ted, it's been really nice to speak with you. Just to finish on a question, thinking about the future, what are you excited about next, Ted?
I mean, I'm always excited about the next projects,
Hmm.
and the industry in general.
Yeah,
Shipping is not going away anytime soon.
yeah, hmm,
AI is not going to take any ship repair jobs.
yeah,
It's
it's true.
always going to be, at least for the next couple decades, a job
Mm,
that requires people and oversight.
hmm.
And there's always a part of the shipping industry that's booming. I mean, right now container rates are in the toilet, but oil tanker rates are booming. So
Mm.
if one industry within the shipping industry is not hiring, another one is. So
Nice. Yeah.
and, and the U.S. is currently trying to do a shipbuilding renaissance. We'll see what comes of it, but we're trying. So I
Hmm.
think the future is bright in shipping.
Nice.
And a lot of the people who do my job are getting close to retirement. A lot of the old timers are going away, and there's not many people stepping up. So I think
Yeah.
there's a lot of opportunity in this sphere.
That's very true, actually. A lot of the guys I speak to for this type of position that you're in are normally 10, 15 years older than you for sure and stepping down soon. So you're right. I think you're actually in like you're probably in like your peak right now.